What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto died and temporarily being sealed away for 15 years by his new family? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. I am a baby. Something was wrong with this picture, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was the small chubby fingers that were now tugging on a beard. Maybe it was because I knew what a beard was, or what fingers were. Maybe it was that I was really hungry and found it oddly comfortable to suck on a boob. I don't know. But what I do know is that it is wrong. But how it was wrong? I had no idea. Not a speck or a clue. It just was. I was feeling as if I should be a little taller, see a little better, and maybe be a little more coherent. I mean, what were these people saying? All I'm hearing is rapid-fire sounds of blah. Was it so hard to speak English? Wait, what's English? It had something to do with speaking and talking, and speaking, and I got nothing. Anyway, it has been like this all week now, whatever a week is. I've been switching back and forth between confusion and understanding. When I feel as if I finally understand something, I question half of what I understood. Like earlier today, I thought this was all a crazy drug-induced dream. Since then I haven't figured out what a drug-induced dream is. This was to say the least annoying on so many levels. I finally had an answer to all this, but I don't understand what the answer is. The second most annoying thing was being unable to see clearly. From what I've been able to tell, the world is just blobs of red. Oh, and yeah, I figured out what red was. After all, I see the color often enough. Now my question is, why is it everywhere? It was pretty at first, but now I need some variety. How about some blue or something? That would be nice if only I could figure out what blue is. My other question would be why the red isn't completely red. I know what red is, but for some reason the blobs aren't quite red, even though they are. They had to be red. What else could they be? Blue? I don't even know what blue is. My head brought up the ideas of it being reddish pink once, another time it said reddish purple. I'm trying to choose which one it is, but since I have no idea what pink or purple is, I'm stumped. I'm leaning towards purple because it sounds funnier. I'll decide on that later. A feeling of weightlessness overwhelmed me and I cried out with my piercingly loud baby voice. I was caught by the only thing that wasn't red. It was lighter than red. In fact, it didn't look anything like red. Maybe that's what blue looks like. Nah. Oh, we're moving again? Okay, fine by me. Just keep me near the non-red. I like the new color. What's a color? Arg. I'll figure it out later. All these thoughts are making my head hurt. Maybe for now I'm just going to stop thinking. Yup. Nope, that didn't work. Let's try looking around. Okay, so it's kind of getting darker. I can't see anymore, but I guess it's not like I could really see before. This is a new color. Diffidently not red, that's for sure. Kind of makes me sleepy. I've decided it's not so bad being carried. I can't walk anyway, and even if I could I'd probably just trip. Plus, this way I can just close my eyes and sleep. I dreamt of nonsensical things like unicorns, butterflies, rainbows, rainbow farting cats made out of Pop-Tarts, zombies. I screamed awake the same time the woman carrying me yelled something along the lines of, "Nani?" Now, whatever I just imagined I didn't want to again. Nope, never ever. I don't even want to know what a zombie is. In fact, let's ignore I had that dream. Maybe this is what I meant earlier when I thought I was in a crazy drug-induced dream. If that thing was supposed to be my answer to what was going on, I don't like it. Zombie equals bad. Bad. Suddenly I was squished to death. I continued crying, of course. That dream scared the shit out of me. Literally. Downside to being a baby. Okay, I got to keep crying. People, notice the smell. Change my diaper. I don't like to be dirty. Then I was abruptly smothered in kisses and water. Crying? Why are you? Don't cry. It'll make me want to cry and, whatever. I'm already crying anyway. Seriously though, I'm sorry. I know my poop probably smells, but you don't need to cry over it. You never did before. She blubbered words of some sort for a bit before kissing my head again. This is weird, and not the weird I'm used to. Something must be wrong. Actually, this is worse than wrong since everything is wrong. So that means something is really wrong. I was suddenly shoved into the non-red blob's arms before set on something relatively uncomfortable and cold. I cried, of course. What else was I supposed to do? I was lifted for a second and I felt something wet touch my back before I was set back down. Next thing I know, I'm getting a kiss from non-red. I really need a name for that color. White. White? Yup, white. It's white. Anyway, so White gave me a kiss and walked away. Looking around I couldn't find the red blob that took care of me. Panicking I cried louder. I didn't want to have crap on my butt. Can't they tell I need a diaper change? It has to smell at least a bit. Why are they leaving? A slam of a very loud door echoed and I screamed. How dare they leave me? The least they could have done was place me somewhere comfy. Staring straight upwards I noticed a glowing swirl on the ceiling. It wasn't a blob, it was a swirl. I could see it, actually see it. I squealed happily, but then it flashed brightly and blinded me. And guess what color it was? Red. It was actually red, not reddish pink or reddish purple. Just red. I hate red. So everything turned black instead and it stayed that way for a long time. After the light went out, I held on to the only thing I could remember. The red swirl that was on the ceiling. I may have omitted the red and made it white in my head though. I was sick of seeing red. I'm also starting to tire of black. It's not that it's a bad color. I like it. It's dark and mysterious. What I don't like is that I can't see anything other than it. Being unable to see in anything but red blobs was annoying, but being unable to see anything at all is torment. During this time of blackness, I've had time to sort my thoughts and figure everything out. That isn't to say I understood what was going on. That would be a big fat no. I just knew my ups from downs and sorted through every thought I could think of. Currently I knew all my colors among other things, even if I hadn't seen them before. My head supplied the image and from there I'd think, oh, so that's what it is. I've also been dreaming a lot, mostly about this world of technology. I've been learning all sorts of things from the dreams like what a tree and car is and how neither should ever meet each other. If they do though, the result is a very painful death. I've had that dream the most. Other things I often dream about are blue teddy bears and zombies. I hate zombies. There is a dream I recall that liked a lot though. It was about a boy with yellow hair. I can't remember much other than feeling really happy when seeing the boy grin. What was weird though was that everything I saw about him was inside a box. Later on I figured out he was a TV show. Still, that dream kept me happy for a while. Keeping on that topic, a lot of my favorite dreams had something to do with what was playing on TV. There was one with a red-headed mermaid. For some reason, I didn't hate her red hair as much as I thought I would. I expected it to be there and if it wasn't it would have been weird. Another TV dream was about a factory full of candy and midgets that sung. Another with a man made of red and gold iron that flew around shooting things with light rays. Another was about someone becoming Santa Claus. The list could keep going on. My fondest dream was the one I had of a boy, much older than me. I could never see his face, it was blurred out, but I remember the name Bradley popped up a lot. We often watched the TV show about the blonde-haired kid. I think that's why I liked those dreams the best. Back to the matter at hand, from what I could tell, I had been dumped off without a diaper change in a black room. Not only could I not move at all, but I was bored. Oh so bored. I don't know how long I've been in here. I think my sense of time is off, but I swear it feels like a year had passed. Maybe more, a lot more. I'd been passing time by gathering thoughts and dreaming, but I think I've officially thought of everything. I even counted the first 100 numbers of pi. It's 3.1415926535897932384626433382795028841971 Novemdecillion 693 Octodecillion 993 Septendecillion 751 Sexdecillion 58 Quindecillion 209 Quatuordecillion 749 Tridecillion 445 Duodecillion 923 Undecillion 78 Decillion 164 Nonillion 62 Octillion 862 Septillion 89 Sextillion 986 Quintillion 280 Quadrillion 348 Trillion 253,421,170,679 By the way, I have no idea how I know it or what it is other than it has to deal with math, but repeating it clears my head and passes time. I tried to make mouthing noises or speak this English I kept thinking about. Of course, I wasn't able to because I couldn't move whatsoever, but that didn't mean I didn't try. I spent what felt like the first year trying to move. After that I switched to dreaming, then thinking about what I dreamt, and for the last year I've thought of killing zombies. Yup, I've been thinking about killing zombies for the last year. I just don't like them. One time, after I had a dream about the creepy things, I thought, why couldn't they all just die? Of course they were already dead, but I wanted them to die correctly. After that I just started thinking of ways to kill the already dead zombies. It is highly entertaining and I haven't run out of ways yet, so it's keeping my mind occupied. My mental self is very proficient with a knife. She's also not bad with a bow, but I digress. I was currently thinking of jabbing a knife through a zombie's throat when a sudden click was heard. I unfroze. I felt myself move, the loosening of muscle, and my mouth gaped. The blackness which I had become so familiar with was suddenly red with a glowing swirl, one I remembered from long ago. Another slam and loud footsteps were heard and I squealed with joy. Yes, there was no more silence and there was a person coming towards me that would hopefully change my really old diaper. Oh, and the person was a yellow blob. Not red. Best day ever. I don't think I realized how much I hated the darkness until I got out of it. When the yellow blob lady picked me up and squished me between her ginormous boobs, all I could think was how I never wanted to be alone again. It was terrifying and suffocating. I think I actually went insane trying to pass time and think of things other than what was really going on in there. The silence was what got me the most though. When she carried me outside and I heard birds chirping, I started wailing in relief. I didn't care who this chick was as long as she stayed with me. I could barely remember red blob and white blob as is anyway. I never even knew what they looked like and they both left me behind in that god-awful place. Just from that, I liked yellow lady blob a lot more already. Oh, and she cleaned my butt off. Finally. From here on my life got a little weirder. Yellow blob traveled a lot and I was almost always carried by her or her friend, the black blob. At first I didn't like black blob, but she grew on me. She was much quieter and spent more time with me than yellow blob. There was also another small blob about my size that black blob liked to carry. Whenever I was set with it, the voices would say the equivalent of, play with Tauntaun. And play I did. I would ramble on in baby talk with the pink blob for hours. One day, about 3 weeks after yellow and black blob saved me, we were staying in a hotel room. Well, I figured it was a hotel room seen as often as we travel. I was looking at a blue blob near me and realized I could see a patterned design. Leaning forward, I realized it was blankets and I could actually see them. Happy at the revelation, I spun my head around and cried out towards where yellow blob sat in a chair. She came over and crouched near me saying something. I stared at her for a moment. It was difficult to focus at first and she had to be really close to me, but I could see her. Yellow blob was actually a blonde-haired busty woman with brown eyes. I waved my arms in the universal up sign and she smiled, lifting me quickly in the air before cradling me and walking back over to where she was sitting. I just took in her features for a while. She wore her hair in ponytails and had a weird purple diamond on her forehead. Seeing it, I lifted my arm up and poked it. The lady looked down at me with a glint in her eye before she set me on her lap to face her. Then she pointed a finger at me and moved it around slowly. Confused, I just followed the finger around with my eyes before looking back up at her questionably. She grinned before cuddling me and calling out, "Shazoon." The black blob came over and I focused on her face. Black blob was, you guessed it, a black-haired woman. She was younger than the blonde lady, somewhere in her teens, and I realized both of them seemed familiar. I waved the feeling away though. Of course they were familiar. I've been with them for weeks now. The shocker for me was focusing on pink blob. For the longest time I thought I wasn't the only baby and that Tauntaun was my brother or sister or something like that. Turns out Tauntaun is a pig, a very cute pig, but a pig. I had been talking, well blabbing, to a pig. The shock was too great for me and I started crying. This freaked both of them out of course and they started talking to me and eventually just set me down for bed. From this point forward, I started listening to everything my caretakers said and did. I wanted to know what was going on and the only way to do that was to figure out what the heck they were saying. So, I was a relatively quiet baby. Catching onto the language wasn't too hard once I started paying attention. I think they noticed I was listening too because they would often set me aside and talk to me slowly while pointing to stuff. The first thing I learned was their names. Tsunade Ne-chan and Shazoon Ne-chan were my lovely caretakers. Tauntaun still had my respect as my first learned name and playmate though. After all, Tauntaun was a much easier name to remember. I also learned my own name. They always pointed to me and would say Hoshi-chan or just Hoshi. It thought it was a suitable name. It sounded like, oh shit, if I thought about it, so to me it was a name that would strike fear into people's hearts. It was perfect. A month later, I learned Hoshi actually meant star because Tsunade took me outside one night and pointed to both the stars and to me while repeating Hoshi. I still liked it, it was my name after all. When I was 3 months old I started rolling over to try and crawl. It took me 2 weeks just to get used to turning on my stomach and another 2 weeks to crawl for the first time. To say my caretakers were surprised was an understatement. From their reaction, I deduced I was probably crawling a lot earlier than I should be. I wanted to dumb myself down a bit so not to draw attention, but at the same time I just wanted to explore. The exploring side of me won. I knew better than to stick stuff in my mouth though, so my wardens should be considered lucky that they practically got a pre-trained baby. It wasn't much later I forced myself to walk by grabbing onto objects to pull me up. Shizune was with me when I did the first time and she screamed and ran out to get Tsunade when she saw me. It scared me at first but later I decided her reaction was hilarious. Tsunade had a fit too, but she got over it quickly. They kept saying stuff along the lines me doing things too early and that they have a prodigy on their hands. I slowed down things after that. I didn't know why, but the word prodigy bothered me. I could already walk and I could gesture to things I wanted so I decided that I could hold off on talking. Around 6 months I got a good handle on the language and felt as if I could understand the gist of anything they said. By 7 months, I tested out talking when no one was around and found out it wasn't that hard. It took me a while to get my tongue to listen to me, but after I did it was easy. When I was a year old, I realized I could make small sentences and understand completely what was said, not just the basic idea. Both of my caretakers also had taken it upon themselves to try and get me to say their name first. They had a bet going on and I found out that Tsunade was quite the gambler but usually lost. I was so tempted to say her name first so she would win for once, but I was also tempted to say Shizune's name instead just to mess with her. Undecided, I compromised. A month after I turned 1 I decided to finally grace them with my first words. I settled for waiting until they both were in the room with me and pointed to the bed saying, "Ne-chan, up," which could refer to either of them. I guessed it was a suffix or something like miss. I'm still figuring that one out. Anyway, by saying just Ne-chan, it referred to them both and therefore no hard feelings on who got their name said first. That and no one would win the bet. Their faces were priceless. Slowly they turned towards me with unrestrained hope in their eyes, practically asking me if I really just talked. But neither of them moved and I still wanted up on the bed. Pouting, I repeated, "Ne-chan, up." They both rushed over to me telling me to say it again. I giggled and indulged them. "Did you hear that, Shizune? She said my name first. I win the bet," Tsunade boasted. "You won? I don't think so. I didn't hear Tsunade Ne-chan. I heard Ne-chan. That could be either of us," Shizune replied. "Well, let's find out. Whose name were you saying, Hoshi? Hers or mine?" Tsunade asked me. I snorted. I was not answering that. Avoiding the question, I simply said, "Up." Shizune snuffled a laugh and lifted me onto the bed where I crawled under the covers to snuggle with the pillows. Tsunade seemed put out and mumbled brat under her breath before going back to her desk. She popped out some sake and started drinking. Oh, did I mention she likes to drink? She's a happy sort of drunk though, so I didn't really care. Shizune likes to hide her sake. Something about it being bad to drink in front of children. So yeah, this was my family. We traveled, I learned, and the first 2 years of my life was spent with my Ne-chans. Sadly, a horrible incident brought my happiness to an end. I was kidnapped. It was on my birthday of all days too. Well, my sorta birthday. I was frozen in time for a while, so it's confusing. If someone did a blood test, they'd say I was born 2 years ago on July 6th, but my real birthday was August 18th 17 years ago. I'm a Leo just like my Tsunade Ne-chan. Hee hee. Not that she knows what a Leo is. Then again, I'm not even positive what it is, I just know I am one. I should probably explain how I knew I was frozen in time though. Firstly, I knew something whacked up happened when I was in that dark space before. I couldn't move and I had a lot of time on my hands. So, about a month ago I asked about it. Ne-chan? I tugged on Shizune's skirt as we walked through a forest. We were switching towns again. Tsunade-ne had apparently gambled away her money and refused to pay up, which pissed off some gang in the previous town. We left the next day. Yes? Shizune looked down and grabbed my hand. Tsunade was grumbling unhappily in front of us about wanting some sake. Why was I in the dark so long? I asked. I'd like to think that my speech was better than other kids my age. In fact, it was awesome and I was proud of it. They beat grammar into me. You learn quickly if you don't want to get a punch to the head. Shizune stopped walking, so did Tsunade. What do you mean? Tsunade questioned me, a hint of guilt in her eyes. The dark place that red blob and white blob put me. It was black and I was there a long time until you saved me, I stated. Tsunade blanched while Shizune just murmured, a red and white blob? You remember that? Tsunade exclaimed. I nodded slowly. Was it weird that I remembered that? I was in there a long time. Why in the world wouldn't I remember? Of course I remember. Is that bad? I panicked. Shizune shook her head. It's not normal to remember anything from so young, but it's not bad. So you're saying you remember being in there? All that time? Tsunade rasped out. I couldn't move and was stuck. I hated it. And no one would change my diaper, I said. Tsunade snorted but had a pained expression on her face. She knelt down to me and I was picked up. She carried me and we continued walking. They were silent for a while. I was about to ask why again when Shizune hesitantly spoke up. You were sealed away for 15 years, Hoshi, she said. Sealed? That was a new word. What's a seal? It's something that, it's words that, arg. How do I explain this? Tsunade grumbled. It's words on paper enforced by chakra that can do almost anything depending on what is written. Chakra? What is? TV. Blonde hair. Glowing. Blue. Green. Red. A body full of veins. A scroll. Chakra is energy that shinobi need to use to utilize a jutsu. That energy comes from the body energy that is collected from every cell in the body and the spiritual energy that comes from training and experience. In other words, jutsus come from these two energies that are squeezed out of the body and molded together. This process is known as molding the chakra, and with this chakra one is able to execute a jutsu by performing a seal, a pink-haired girl explained. That? I finished flatly. My heart ached at familiarity of the images I saw. Crushing the feeling I realized my question was already explained. But just to make sure, I asked. Is chakra energy? Yes. It's a combination of spiritual and physical energy. Tsunade trailed off whist glancing down at me. So, seals are energy, chakra, with instructions? I deduced. That is certainly a way of putting it. Yes, seals are chakra with instructions. And you were placed under a seal which is instructions were to stop time in the room you were in, she explained. Why? I asked. Why was I in there? Why didn't they let me out? Was I bad? Did I do something wrong? How come? It was my fault, Tsunade growled. I shot my head up and looked at her guilt-stricken face. Tsunade-sama, you didn't mean for, it wasn't your fault. Shizune rebuked. You went immediately after you found out. I found out 15 years too late. She yelled back. I shouldn't have traveled or changed my appearance so much. The bird summon would have found me sooner. It's not your fault that summon had horrible tracking abilities and no sense of time. It said it stayed in Konoha for 3 years looking for someone with blonde hair and a diamond on their head. Not only that, it did the same thing in every town it went to. What kind of summon does that? Shizune countered. A bad one, I guessed while butting in on the conversation. I didn't like how Tsunade-ne was moping. By the way, what's a summon? They both ignored me. Grr. Still, if I had stayed in Konoha just a month or two longer, that never would have happened. I would have had the letter. Did you hear what Hoshi said, Shizune? She remembered her whole time in that damn chamber. All 15 years. Tsunade was yelling now. I am right here, I mumbled. Don't ignore me. All 15 years. At least that explains the prodigy thing, Shinzune murmured. But, still, that was not your fault. You can't blame yourself on this. Yes, I bit her hand and she dropped me. Brat, what was that for? She yelled. Ignoring me, I yelled back. I dunno what you're all talking about, but I've got the gist. Just listen to Shizune. She's always right. Like that time she told you to stop drinking because you'd get sick. You didn't listen and you were in the bathroom making icky sounds the next day. And that other time when? What was that? Tsunade growled. I paled. Nothing at all. I squeaked. hiding behind Shizune. Shizune smirked and patted my head. I'm always right, huh? You've learned well, Hoshi. Tsunade snorted. Whatever. Long story short, kid, you're from a place called Uzushiyogakure. 17 years ago it was crushed in a collaborative attack. In order to save you and keep the Uzumaki clan alive, your mom and grandpa sealed you away in that dark chamber, you remember. I was sent a letter via bird summon who was told to look for me in Konoha. I wasn't there though, and the bird had horrible tracking abilities. 2 years ago and 15 years after you were sealed, the bird finally found me and I got a letter that told me about you. I was supposed to take you out and take you to live with your aunt, but your aunt died 3 years ago, so Shizune and I took you in. The rest is history. We all stayed silent for a while waiting for me to absorb this new piece of information. I wasn't left behind by Red and White Blob? They were saving me? I had thought they left me to rot. This news kind of made me feel bad for thinking bad of them. Now it all made sense. Red Blob was mom and White Blob was probably grandpa, and they both were crying and the kissing and, oh, I should be dead now, shouldn't I? But I'm not, because they saved me. They gave me up. They could have just let me die with them, but instead, they gave me Tsunade, Shizune and Taunton. They gave me life. And I hated them for it all this time. This realization made me do something I haven't done in over a year: cry. It wasn't loud crying, just tears and maybe a runny nose. But I was upset with myself. How could I hate them? Sure, they stuck me in a cold, frozen black zone for 15 years, but they didn't mean to. They probably only thought I would be in there for. Then it dawned on me. This was why Tsunade was feeling bad. She didn't know about me until 15 years later. Not only that, I just told her that I remembered my whole time in that hellhole. But still, she saved me from it, and her being late wasn't even her fault. It was that bird. I rushed over and gave her a hug, wiping my snot and tears all over her pants. I said the only thing I could think of that would help her understand how I felt: I'll love you, Nei Xuan. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What? She stumbled back. I looked up at her. You saved me. You may have been late, but you saved me. I can't hate you for that, I cried out. And that settled that mess. I found out about my past and Tsunade got over her guilt. Well, she didn't at first, but I threatened to use one of her ponytails as a tissue and she shut up. I learned from the best, nay? So after all that Jasmo-Tasmo went down, my birthday came a month later. It was August 18th, my real birthday. Even if I was physically 2 years 1 month and 12 days old. But who's counting? And Tsunade decided it was time for celebration and took us. Guess where? A casino. Shizune was against it, of course, but Tsunade wouldn't budge. Apparently she was feeling lucky and I was to be her good luck charm. I only agreed because she promised to split her winnings with me if she got anything. That, and I did kinda sorta want to see if I was lucky like she said. You'd be surprised how convincing she could be. 1 hour later and 3 rounds of poker, it turns out she was right. I am lucky. Everyone else, which were many ugly-looking men, let me tell you, was broke, and Tsunade was currently rolling in money. I was giggling and Shizune was just staring in shock at the odds. The men were in outrage though. We lost to a bitch and her brat. The fattest one yelled. I've heard of her though. I made sure she's that blonde rumored to always lose in her bets. She must have cheated or something. Another shouted. The rest hooted in agreement. Tsunade was too happy to even care about their accusing. Guess my luck has turned men. Send that rumor around. They stood up in outrage and one pulled out a sword. I was starting to get nervous at this point and shuffled behind Shizune. Tsunade saw this and punched the table into men, shoving them back into the ground. Grabbing the money, we left running. It was a normal occurrence to me now. Usually the towns we left we ran away from. The only difference this time was that I was with them in the casino and was seen. I was scared at first, but we were in a different town in less than a day and I wasn't worried anymore. It's Tsunade after all. She can handle anything. I had witnessed her knock down a group of men with one punch to a table. I was positive we were fine. This happened all the time, after all. But we weren't fine. The men remembered me, and the next time both Tsunade and Shizune left me in a hotel to go out, I was kidnapped. I was taking a nap and they broke the door, waking me up. I was shoved in a sack and I heard a gruff voice tell another to leave a note. To put it simply, Tsunade was pissed when she found it. At the moment I'm in a sack. It is uncomfortable to say the least. The sack itself smells like horse shit and the man carrying me in the sack smells like Bo. That plus the complete carelessness they were taking while running is causing the sack to keep ramming into things. It hurts, but I'm mostly too distracted by the awful smell. I know what is happening, but at the same time I'm not really panicking. The bad men left a note. It isn't like Tsunade won't know what happened. She'll beat all the men up with her super punch just like before. At the same time I have this nagging feeling she won't. What if the note isn't something that demanded ransom so they didn't give a location? What if she can't find me? What if it is a ransom note and she doesn't want to pay it? What if the men kill me before she finds me? What if I need to save myself? And so my thoughts wandered. What could I do? I was two. These men are older than me, stronger than me, have weapons, and probably have no qualms about killing a measly kid if she becomes too much of a handful. I'm stuck in a sack. I'm almost positive that even if I do get out, they'll notice. I'm even more positive that if they don't notice that I'll die lost in the surrounding forest instead. The question for me is, which is worse? I answered that easily. I'd rather die in the forest than by the men. At least the forest smelled nice. So what am I going to do? I shouldn't expect Tsunade and Shizune to save me. The possibility is there, but at the same time I shouldn't rely all my hope with them. It's not that I don't trust them to beat the guys up, oh no, it's because I don't know if they'll find us. If they find us, I'm free. But if they don't, I'm done for. I need a plan. First, I need to know how many men there are, which is pretty hard to figure out since I'm in a sack. Closing my eyes, I tried concentrating on the sound of footsteps. How many are there? 4 steps. 6, 9, 20, 23? It's not working. Come on, concentrate, I grumbled to myself. I tried counting again. There were more than 3, but I couldn't tell between footsteps. There could be as many as 20 for all I know. Growling angrily, I shuffled around in the sack trying to let out my anger on something, anything. Stop squirming, you little brat. The person carrying me yelled. Something smashed into the sack harshly and hit me in the stomach. I wheezed in pain. Squeezing my eyes closed, tears escaped. Abruptly, the darkness of my mind sparked blue. Dim blue. Everywhere. Trees surrounded me on all sides for as far as I could see. No, feel. I could feel it. There was a trail and on it a rock with a small blue shaped like an ant. Many ants joined it. A beetle scurried across a tree. A squirrel ran branch to branch. Birds flew and the world glowed all around me. 6 larger blues surrounded me. A 7th carried me. One was much brighter than the others. The rest were dim. All of them took the shape of men. The largest of the dim blues was leading. A humongous pulse flared distantly behind us. I reached backwards and saw everything as I went. The trees that were covered in moss, thinned down until there was a town. It was far, very far. The bright blue pulse flared again and was joined by another. I zoned in there. Shapes of women. One held another blue. They suddenly were racing in this direction at great speeds. Their figure seemed familiar to me. Then, realization hit me. Tsunade, Shizune, and Taunton. They were coming. They were far away, but they were coming. I was overwhelmed by relief and receded my vision back to the men surrounding me. There were 7. That wasn't too many and they seemed to be a little burly. I bet I could outrun them if I got out. I opened my eyes and the glowing world dissipated. I grinned. I had no idea what just happened, but I didn't care. I could see with my eyes closed and it was awesome. Exhilarating. I wanted to do it again and just explore without exploring, but I had something more important to do. The next order of business would be getting out of the sack. Truthfully, it wouldn't be that hard. They didn't tie my wrists or feet and if I ignored the taste of the poop-smelling bag, I could probably rip it open with my teeth. From what I could tell, these guys were underestimating me just because I was a kid. Then again, if I was in their footsteps I would underestimate me too. I could use this though. I just had to seem like a wimp. Maybe they'd let their guard down while they slept. Okay, simple plan. Wait for them to sleep, rip bag open with teeth, and then run like hell. Probably wasn't going to work, but it was all I had. That and my new awesome head vision. I felt like a superhero. I'm Superman, Bradley shouted as he jumped on the bed posing. I can punch planets and shoot lasers out of my ass. Superman can't do that, silly, I giggled before throwing a blue teddy bear at him. I frowned. Where did that come from? The sack and I were suddenly tossed on the ground harshly. I grunted in discomfort. "Feed the kid," someone said. "We're stopping here tonight. Make camp." The sack was ripped open and I was yanked out of it by a calloused hand. I struggled in the man's grip, but he held on effortlessly, probably leaving a bruise. "Keep still," he growled while tying my hands together and then to a nearby tree. He then shoved a piece of dry bread in my mouth and I choked in surprise as he walked away. "Now, sit there and be quiet." Spitting the bread out, I coughed before I spit out the taste. It had been moldy. Well, there went plan 1. I can't exactly escape with myself tied to a tree. Slumping, I leaned back against the trunk and looked up at the night sky. The stars twinkled and I searched around for the moon only to find it missing. New moon then, no wonder it's so dark out. That would have been advantageous if only I wasn't tied up. I looked around. The men were surrounding a low-laying fire and cooking potatoes in the burning ashes. I swallowed hungrily as the smell wafted over to me. I looked away when I felt irritation on my arm. Turning as much as I could, I tried to get a good look at it. It wasn't red, but it was irritated from rubbing against the tree bark. I glared angrily at the tree. You? I looked at the fallen foliage from the tree that is on the ground. In fact, I noticed that where my bare legs touched the dead leaves, they felt the same irritation, if not more so. "Don't." A hand yanked mine away from some leaves. "It's you. Their leaves will kill you and you won't even realize it." "Oh, sorry, Bradley. It looked like the rosemary bush I gathered from yesterday," I said, pulling back from the plant. "It's a tree, not a bush. It may not look it now since it's only a sapling, but it'll look like that in a few years," he said, pointing to a large grove nearby. "Never eat it." I blinked the images away. I looked between the yew leaves and the potatoes. Then, I opened my mouth on impulse and said, "Potatoes taste disgusting plain. The least you could do is season them. You have rosemary right here." I gestured to a yew sapling nearby. "I told you to keep your mouth shut, twerp." The one who tied me up yelled. He started to get up and come towards me when the guy, the leader from earlier, stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "Calm down, Kato," he said, then turned towards me. "You certainly sound articulate. What are you, 1? I'm 2, I glared. "Hey, and how do you even know what rosemary is?" he questioned as he picked some of the yew off a stem. "My Nate-chan taught me it when she was cooking," I said. It was partially true. Shizune did show me what rosemary was when we saw some on the side of the road once. We had potatoes for dinner and it made it taste better. He smirked, walked over and pat my face twice before going back to cooking. This time he put some of the yew leaves on the potatoes. "Thanks for the advice, kid. You still don't get any," he sneered. I frowned and looked away. I didn't want any anyway. I don't have a death wish. The men fell asleep a little later with one near me keeping watch. I closed my eyes and felt my vision change to the glowing world again. I looked for Tsunade-ne. She and Shizune-ne were closer, but won't be here for a few hours probably. A sudden cough from my watcher drew my attention and I look over at him. He was breathing heavily and fanning his face a bit. I inwardly smile. The yew is finally working. I look over at the sleeping men and watch for their breathing. Focusing my sight, I noticed most were also breathing heavily but 2 weren't at all. I frowned. I had inadvertently just killed some people, didn't I? I frowned some more when the watcher dropped and laid still on the ground near me. I leaned towards him and carefully used my feet to pull the sword he had from its sheath. Once it was out, I brought my feet in it towards me, dropped it and turned my back. Feeling around with my hands, I carefully searched for the knife and then spent the next 10 minutes cutting the rope on my hands. When I finally got untied, I stood up, quietly walked over to the sleeping men, and watched the remaining 4 as they died peacefully in their sleep. Then I sat down near the edge of the camp and stared at their dead bodies, waiting for Nate-chan to show up. During all this, I had one question that kept going through my head. Why don't I feel anything? I just killed 7 men. I should be feeling guilty, but I don't, not even a little bit. Is that normal? Well, they don't even look all that dead. If you didn't notice they weren't breathing, you'd think they were sleeping. Maybe that was the reason. The only emotion I could place was indifference and happiness that I wasn't hurt badly. I only had a large bruise on my stomach from that one kick and a bruise on my wrist from that one guy holding it too hard. It was barely anything. It'd heal in less than a week. I sat there for a few hours until dawn when I felt Tsunade and Shizune come from less than a minute away. I didn't see Shizune at first, but Tsunade came stampeding into the clearing so quickly I jumped. She slammed her fist into the ground and the earth shattered. I squeaked when suddenly, I was lifted up by Shizune and pulled backwards away from the flying rocks. I looked back to see the already dead bodies now covered in cuts, only none of them bled. Tsunade and Shizune probably realized this because Tsunade stopped her attack and Shizune dropped down next to her bewildered. I just grasped onto Shizune and Tonton, hugging them tightly. I'd missed them. "Thank goodness you're alright," Shizune said while hugging me back. After a moment I was passed to Tsunade and she crushed me into her chest and we stayed that way for a long time. She ran her fingers through my red hair and murmured "I'm sorry" a few times. I frowned into her shoulder and pulled back. "Why?" I asked. "It wasn't your fault." She just crushed me back into a hug when I heard an abrupt gasp behind me that came from Shizune. Both Tsunade and I turned to her with questioning looks when she pleaded, "Please tell me you didn't eat any of the potatoes they cooked." "Oh, I forgot about that. I guess I had to tell them." "No, they wouldn't give me any," I replied. "I wouldn't have eaten any anyway. I tricked them into using you as a seasoning. They died earlier in their sleep. Well, all except the one who was supposed to be watching me. He fell over and I used his sword to cut the rope." They gawked at me and Shizune hesitantly lifted up a small branch from one of the yew trees. "You mean this?" I nodded. I told them it was rosemary. "It's not rosemary," I stated simply. "It's you. You poisoned them," Tsunade whispered silently, giving me a curious look. "Where did you learn about this yew?" "Bradley told me," I replied. "He stopped me from trying to gather some because I thought it was rosemary." Understanding and relief seemed to cover their faces. "Berdori?" Shizune tried to roll the name on her tongue. I scrunched up my nose. It sounded weird when she said it. Strange name. Tsunade started walking away from the site with me in her arms. Shizune and Tonton followed. "You never told us you left the hotel before," she remarks. I blinked at what she said. What did she mean, left the hotel? I've never left. Confused, I was about to ask when my stomach growled. Blushing, I said instead, "Nei-chan, I'm hungry." "Well then we better hurry to the next town and get you fed." She grinned down at me. Seeing this I grinned back and gave her another hug. Then something occurred to me and unable to resist I asked, "Nei-chan? Can you teach me to be awesome like you? I want to explode the ground too." She barked out a laugh. "You got a long way before you'd ever be able to do that." "Teach me." "Well, we do have a long journey to Konoha," Shizune said as Tsunade leaned down and picked up a fallen leaf before handing it to me. "What's Konoha?" I asked while inspecting the leaf Tsunade handed me. The word Konoha stood out to me in a way. Maybe we had been there before? Tsunade's smile waned and she replied, "It's going to be your new home, Hoshi." Surprised, my eyebrows rose. "We're going to stay somewhere? Not travel anymore?" "No," Shizune answered for her. "We've come to realize that it's too unsafe for you to stay with us. We were originally going to send you there once we found you, but we got attached," Tsunade finished. What happened to you? It can't happen again. Konoha, you'll be safe there." By the time they finished explaining, I had dropped my leaf in shock with tears pricking my eyes. "You're leaving me?" They were silent. I looked between them with pleading eyes, hoping they'd change their minds. They turned away abashed, but unyielding. I cried into Tsunade's shoulder for a long while until she cleared her throat. I turned my head and looked at her. She gave something along the line of an apologetic look before handing me another leaf. "So, do you want to learn the secret of my awesomeness, as you put it?" I gave her a watery smile. The next month and a half or so consisted of heading towards my new home. Tsunade seemed reluctant to tell me about it, often changing the topic when I asked. Shizune was the same, but only because Tsunade was with us. Eventually I gave up attempts of learning about the place and resolved myself to learn of it only when I got there. We probably could have arrived there in a week if we ran, but we all had a silent agreement to extend the journey to Konoha as long as we could. In order to delay time, we went to some cultural sites, much to Shizune's joy. While Shizune dragged us around fawning over things, Tsunade continued teaching me chakra control techniques. She thought it might take me a while to find my chakra. I was only 2 after all, but it came to me the moment I thought of it. All I had to do was close my eyes and feel the glowing world, only this time I had to feel it inside myself. Happy with my quick progress, I went straight to channeling the chakra into the leaf and then sticking it to my forehead. This is where my problem lied. I could not in any physical way get my chakra to pour into that itty-bitty leaf. I kept overdoing it and causing it to become fried. After a day of killing leaves, Nei-chan told me she forgot to mention that my reserves were higher than average due to my Uzumaki blood, which made chakra control difficult. I was upset, but she assured me I would still be able to have good chakra control so long as I practiced often. However, I couldn't start with the leaf. Instead of starting small, she made me simply try and get my chakra to appear visible all around me. Easy, I finished it in an hour. I wasn't even winded. The rest of the journey consisted of lowering the area in which I focused chakra out of until it was as small as the leaf. By the time we finally arrived near Konoha, I was able to focus my chakra down to only my hands. "We are separating here, Hoshi," Tsunade-ne said, stopping in the middle of the large road. We were still about an hour away from Konoha. "What, you're not coming with me? I don't know where to go. What am I supposed to do once I get there?" "What about, let me reword that. We are separating here physically. I'm sending a shadow clone with you," she rephrased. "What's a shadow?" A white poof clouded my vision and a second Tsunade stood next to all of us. "Clone, never mind," I said dryly. "You always do that, Nei-chan. You never even let me finish my questions." She crossed her arms smirking. "You're too predictable. It's a advanced jutsu. Who knows, maybe I'll teach you when you're older," she said as she crouched down for a hug. I ran to her outstretched arms and hugged her neck tightly before pulling away and rushing over to Shizune to do the same. After that I picked up and kissed Tonton's head, then handed her back to Shizune. We had already said our goodbyes last night before we went to bed. To put it simply, there were a lot of tears on Shizune's and I's part. Tsunade-ne wouldn't admit it if anyone asked, but I'm sure I heard a sniffle or two from her when she thought we were asleep. Either way, we wanted to be smiling when we separated, not snot-faced, so we got that over with beforehand. We all just stood there a while before Tsunade turned to the clone. "You know what to do." Tsunade's clone nodded. I went to follow her, but Shizune pulled me back into one more hug and whispered, "Remember what we planned the other day?" I grinned mischievously and nodded into her shoulder. "Good," she smiled and pulled back. I walked over to the clone, taking her hand only to be lifted up and held on her hip instead. I wrapped my arms around her neck and waved goodbye as we took to the trees. Laying my head on Tsunade-ne-chan's clone's shoulder, I thought about Shizune's soon-to-be prank. You'd be surprised, but Shizune is quite the prankster. She's just very subtle about it. Once, she replaced Tsunade-ne's whole stash of sake with flavored water. When asked about it, she simply replied, "Oh, I guess next time you'll have to double-check to make sure it's sake before you buy it, Tsunade-sama." Lately I've been in on them, and this time was going to be our biggest prank yet. Another few minutes passed and we arrived to two large gates that towered yards above our heads. I heard Nei-chan's clone mumble a few profanities and an, "I don't want to be here," as we walked up to two men behind a counter to the left of the gates. They were gaping at us openly before abruptly straightening their backs and squeaking out, "Tsunade-sama. You're back. Oh, we better alert the Hokage." One of the men dashed off, and not soon after a crowd seemed to be slowly forming near the gate as we walked through. Embarrassed, I held onto the clone tightly and hid my face in her neck. I overheard villagers' voices as we passed, which only served to embarrass me more. Who was Tsunade-ne to them? I peeked out and trailed my eyes over the growing crowd. Oh my god, did one just bow to them? Tsunade-hime's returned. She's back. I wonder who that kid is. Such vivid red hair. Doesn't that remind you of? Shush, maybe she's here to finish that demon. I can't believe the Tsunade-sama is back. I'm seeing legendary Sannin Tsunade in the flesh. Am I dreaming? Whoa, Sannin? Hime? Demon? What is with all these people? Oh, wait, I almost forgot. I needed to do the prank Shizune gave me. Shyly, I lifted my face and turned to Tsunade-ne's clone and said, "Okawa-san, why are they staring at us?" The clone sputtered and stared at me wide-eyed. "Oh, Okawa-san?" I internally sniggered at her reaction. Once Shizune gets word of this, she's going to have a field day. In fact, the moment those words left my mouth, the crowd had a field day. Did she just say, "Oh my, Tsunade-sama has a kid"? Now that you mention it, don't their noses look the same? Do you think that's why she's returned? I never thought that she would. The clone blushed lightly and glared down at me accusingly. I gave her the most innocent eyes I could muster. "Ah, isn't she so cute? I wonder what she named her. Who do you think the father is? She's not my kid," the clone suddenly yelled with a red face. After that we sped to the big red building away from the crowd. The moment we were in closed doors she scowled at me and dropped me on the ground. "Shizune set you up to this, didn't she? Didn't she? What are you talking about, Nei-chan?" I played dumb. She cracked her knuckles and I paled, spouting, "Yes. Yes, she did. Please don't hurt me. I don't want any more noogies." "Shizune, you were so dead when I dispel," she growled out loud before grabbing my hand and leading me up lots of stairs. Setting the 2-year-old on me is not fair. I would have giggled, but I didn't have a death wish. When we reached a certain level, we walked past a receptionist desk whose receptionist was gawking at us. I ducked my head as we turned and Nei-chan slammed open a door to a room with a very large window. Looking around I spotted an old man with a pipe in his mouth staring openly at us. I hid behind Tsunade-ne's legs. "So it's true. Welcome back, Tsunade-chan," the old guy said warmly. "Don't call me that," Nei-chan said. I peeked from behind her and looked at the old guy. He peered down at me and smiled. "And who might you be?" I opened my mouth to reply only to be cut off by Tsunade handing him a letter. "Her name is Uzumaki Hoshi, last known survivor of the fall of Uzushigakure." The letter should explain things. I placed a fake birth certificate in there with her real one so not to cause confusion during blood tests. "That's about it, I think. Take care of her," she said. She leaned down and gave me a quick kiss on my forehead and then poofed into oblivion. Just like that, I stared at the dissipating smoke for a minute before turning to the old man. He had dropped his pipe in shock. I couldn't help it this time, I giggled. He abruptly looked down at me, then he reached for the letter and opened it, reading quickly. I watched him read it once, twice, thrice, before he pulled out the birth certificates and dropped them on the table wide-eyed. Once he seemed to gather his thoughts, he gazed back at me again. I shuffled my feet sheepishly and said the only thing that came to mind. "Hi, you can't go in there. The Hokage is having a very important meeting right now," someone shouted outside the office. Slam. The abrupt sound caused me to scream and jolt backwards right into the old man's desk, hitting my head and falling on the floor. Whimpering, I caressed my swollen skull as a yellow blur flew inside the room, an angry receptionist not far behind. "Hokage-sama, I am so sorry." He rushed by before I could stop. "Gigi." I turned to the source of the sound only to see a bright blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid who seemed a little older than me, grinning ear to ear and hugging the elder man. The man himself had an exasperated but warm smile on his face as he gave the boy a quick hug back. "You remember it's my birthday, right? Right?" the boy exclaimed. Chuckling, he set the boy down and patted his head. "Just because I'm getting old does not mean I'm losing my memory," the old man replied lightheartedly. Confused and rubbing my head a little, I sat up from where I fell only to catch the receptionist staring at me curiously. Embarrassed, I curled myself inward and crawled behind the desk, under the old guy's feet to hide. I didn't like the attention at all. I've only ever been with my Nei-chans. I never left the hotel unless with them. I had no idea how to talk to any of these people. "It's okay, Naruto can stay in here." Actually, he had perfect timing. I was about to go see him. I heard the deep voice of the elder say, "Yes, Hokage-sama." The sound of a door closing echoed lightly under the desk. Silence. "Gigi, who's under the desk?" the boy, Naruto asked. Hearing this, I shuffled farther into a corner and hugged my legs to myself. The old man, I mean Hokage, slid his chair back slightly and I saw the blonde peek under and look at me. The Hokage also leaned down and said, "Come on out, little one. No one's going to hurt you." I shook my head vehemently. I was not leaving here. Something about these two had started making my head feel jumbled, especially the blonde. "You're a little shy, I see," the Hokage murmured as he sat back up. "Naruto, see if you can get her to come out. I've got something to tell you both." "Okay, Gramps," he replied, and suddenly the small boy crawled under the desk with me and we stared at each other for a second. "Come out," he yelled, straight to the point. I winced at the loudness resonating in the enclosed space. He grabbed my arm and started dragging me forwards. Unable to pull back, I was yanked out from under the desk and led to a seat which I was pushed down into. The Hokage's amused expression and Naruto's grin greeted me and I couldn't help but blush and lightly smile back. I quickly curled back into a ball, but somehow I started to feel oddly comfortable around these two even though I didn't know them at all. "So who's she and what did you want to tell us, Gigi?" Naruto asked as he jumped into a seat next to me. "And where's my present? Why don't you two introduce yourselves first?" the Hokage suggested. We both turned towards each other and ever on the initiative. He stuck his hand out with a grin. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. The next Hokage, Tte. My eyes widened. Did he just say Uzumaki? I thought that they all had. "Say it again," I abruptly shouted, all shyness abandoning me. Both he and the Hokage seemed taken aback. "I'm the next Hokage?" Naruto quirked his head to the side. No. Before that, what's your name?" I asked impatiently. "Uzumaki Naruto," he stated. "Why?" I jumped from my chair and crashed into him, wrapping my arms around him in a hug. He was an Uzumaki. He was family. I thought I was alone because Nade-chan said that I was the last since my aunt died who lived in Konoha, so wait. My aunt died who lived in Konoha. Slowly I connected the dots and stared down and the highly confused and blushing Naruto. Why are you hugging me?" he squeaked red-faced. I smiled widely at him. "You're my mom's sister's son," I exclaimed turning to the Hokage excitedly, "right?" The Hokage's eyes widened for a second before smiling with a nod. Grinning, I turned back to the now shocked blonde who was staring at me with something unrecognizable in his eyes. "Does that mean, my name's Uzumaki Hoshi. Nice to meet you, Naruto ni." Suffice to say, he tackled me into another hug. "How's that for a birthday present?" He started crying. I didn't know why, but he just started crying. And I have no idea what to do other than hug him back. His reaction to finding out whom I am was confusing me greatly. Shouldn't he be happy? I know I am. Minutes passed in which he continued to cling to me and bawl. I just continued giving him a hug and awkwardly pat his back. Eventually, I looked over at the Hokage with a help look only to see him conveniently looking down at paperwork. Evil man, how could you leave me with the mess here? What to do? I felt a particular wetness on my arm and recoiled slightly. Snot. There is snot on my arm. There is snot on my arm. Insert panic face. Oh God. To deal with it or not to deal with it, that is the question. If I stay still and ignore it, I'm comforting my newfound family. On the other hand, it's snot. Yup, I'm totally going to. Thankfully I didn't have to make that decision because in the next second Naruto pulled back teary-eyed, but more calmed down. Wiping his nose with the back of his hand, he hiccuped out, "I'm not crying, I just have something in my eye." And I'm the Hokage, I said sarcastically while I discreetly wiped the snot off my arm with a nearby drape. Hopefully no one will notice the new slimy addition to the decor. By the way, what's a Hokage? Powerful. Leader of Konohagakure. Senju Hashirama. Senju Tobarama. Sarutobi Hiruzen. Namikaze Minato. Senju Tsunade. Red and white hat. Hokage monument. One has 4 heads, the other with 5. I blink, then look out the window at the 4-headed monument I had just envisioned, only this time in person. I turned back and look at the Hokage and see the red and white hat I had also imagined atop his head. Then I thought back on the 5-headed monument, only with Nade-chan on it. I furrowed my eyebrows in confusion at the images I just had. Now that I had time to really think about it, this seems to happen a lot. Weird. What? Naruto shouted at me. I looked to him. He seemed completely fine now, in fact he didn't even look as if he had been crying. "You don't know what the Hokage is?" "I didn't, but my head just told me," I said. The Hokage shot his eyes towards me and Naruto just gave me a puzzled expression. A Hokage is the name of the leader of this village, also known as Konohagakure, correct? Yeah, and I'm going to be Hokage one day too. I'll be the strongest in the village and everyone will look up to me, Naruto explained excitedly. The strongest in the village? I looked over at the current Hokage who was giving me a calculating look. Ignoring that I asked, "You're the Hokage?" He gave me a nod and a smile. "The leader of the village?" Another nod. I raised an eyebrow. "The strongest of the strong?" A sigh and a nod. He seemed to see where this was going. "But you're so old," I exclaimed. Naruto cracked up laughing. I just continued scrutinizing the supposed Hokage while wondering how in the world he was the strongest of all the, what was he the strongest of? Ninja. Oh, right, ninja. He was the strongest ninja in the village? I tried to wrap my brain around it. Nope, I just couldn't see it. Lies, I mumbled to myself. It has to be lies. He sighed deeply before gesturing me towards him. Could a lesser ninja do this? He asked as he pulled up his hand surrounding it in a blue glow. Wow, Gigi, that's so cool. Naruto yelled. I narrowed my eyes. That trick may work on Naruto, but not on me. I slammed my right hand down on his desk next to where the Hokage's hands lay glowing and applied chakra to my own hands. Even I can do that, I proudly stated. I had just learned it after all, even if I still couldn't do the leaf exercise without killing the poor things. Naruto gaped at me. Why you? No way. Teach me. The Hokage seemed slightly put out by the fact I ruined his fun, but also interested. So Tsunade-chan taught you some chakra exercises, did she? Then I turned to Naruto, I'll teach you later. Yada, he cheered. The Hokage chewed on his pipe a bit, looking between the two of us. I'm going to have another mini menace running around soon, I can just tell. I grinned. Menace, huh? I liked it. Nay, Hoshi-chan, Naruto said. How old are you? I turned 2 last month. A couple months ago. I said, thinking back to which birth date I should be using. You don't know your own birthday? He asked incredulously. I have 2 birthdays, okay. I just don't know which one I'm supposed to use, I grumbled. Lucky, I only get 1 birthday, today. I just turned 3, he stated smugly. I pouted slightly upon learning he was older than me, then frowned. I don't have a gift for you. You already got me one, he smiled secretly. I tilted my head, but didn't question it. I'd just go buy him a gift later today. What should I get him? Sorry to interrupt, a voice said from the window. We all turned and a silver-haired man with a mask covering most of his face jumped into the room. All of a sudden he looked at us, stared with his one eye, then turned around and jumped back out. After a moment I asked, is that normal? It can be, the Hokage replied with an exhale of smoke. Rude, I mumbled. Nay, what do I do now? Well, you wish to stay with Naruto, I assume, he smiled. Naruto looked at me pleadingly. That was a no-brainer, of course. I'll make it so you both will be together in the adoption list then, he murmured as he started writing things down. Adoption? I questioned before realizing the situation I was in. Basically, I'm 2 years old and have no parents or guardians anymore. Oh, yeah, I'm an orphan now. The Hokage gave me a sympathetic look and Naruto frowned thoughtfully. On the plus side, at least I have Naruto with me. He grinned, giving me another hug, then asked, Gigi, can you take us out to eat Shiraku's? I want some birthday ramen. Sorry Naruto. I would have, but Hoshi here has caused my paperwork for today to double with the commotion she caused. He gave me a slight glower. It was funny. I reasoned, only to get a chastising look in return. Hey, it wasn't my idea, sadly. What commotion? Naruto looked between us. What was funny? Tell me, I'll tell you over ramen. By the way, what's ramen? Oh my sweet ramen king. He screamed, dragging me out of the Hokage's office. My ears. I cried, slamming my hands over them in pain. The Hokage just puffed his pipe while pulling out some more papers. I'm getting too old for this. Naruto ran ahead while dragging me by my hand through the crowded streets of Konoha. He was grinning like no tomorrow and his smile was contagious. I was laughing the whole way. However, when we went through the center of town, I couldn't help notice strange whispers directed our way as we passed. I couldn't hear anything in particular, but there was certainly pointing and glares. Confused and embarrassed, I ducked my head as we ran. Were they mad because they found out I pranked them? Calling Tsunade Okawa-san did get more of a reaction than I thought it would. Or, maybe it was my hair? I did hear someone comment on it when I arrived earlier. Now that I thought about it, I hadn't seen anyone with red hair at all. Uncomfortable, I promised myself I'd buy a hat to cover up the red locks later today. Oh, and while I do that I can find Naruto a birthday present. Sounds like a plan, but first I must find out what this ramen is that he keeps relishing on about. When we finally reached the farther edge of town, Naruto led me into an open bar restaurant with a very high counter. He hopped right up onto a bar stool, but I struggled getting up and eventually was pulled up with the help of Naruto. Iras Himace. Oh, Naruto, it's you. A man walked out with a grin on his face. And who's your friend? My sister. Naruto said happily. Sister, you say? The man raised his brows. Naruto, I'm your cousin, I leaned over and whispered. He ignored or didn't hear me, confirming the man's question instead. I sighed. The man eyed me with a smile. I'm Tucci, the owner of this ramen shop. It's nice to meet the sister of my best customer. I flushed a bit replying, you too, Tucci-san. Now what can I get for you both? He asked kindly. Miso ramen, Naruto immediately replied. I looked to Naruto helplessly. Make that 2 miso ramens. Coming right up, Tucci walked back into the back. Quietness encompassed the shop as I sat there awkwardly, unknowing what to say. Naruto seemed to having no such qualms yet again and turned to me grinning. You lived outside of Konoha, right? What's it like? I bet it was amazing. I thought of all the rundown towns we stayed in before answering. I don't know about amazing. My Nate-chans and I, traveled all over. Truthfully, this is the most amazing place I've ever visited before. It's so big and full of so many people. There's so much color. Really? He looked at me doubtfully. Really? I nodded seriously. There was probably one place that may have had this village beaten, but I couldn't see it when I was there. I was told it was beautiful. What? Where? Uzushigakure. Tsunade had visited it once before, the attack, and she said it was the most beautiful village, I said wistfully. I've never heard of that village before. And what do you mean by attack? He asked. I looked over at him speculatively. Don't you know? You're an Uzumaki, I stated. At his confused face, I faltered. He really doesn't know anything. He didn't even recognize the name Uzushigakure. In shock I yelled, you know nothing of your heritage at all? No? He scratched the back of his head nervously from my outburst. Tell me you at least know about the Uzumaki clan. Please, I begged. We're a clan? He yelled wide-eyed. My mouth dropped. Screw the ramen. I was giving him a history lesson now. Ramen's ready, Tucci called as he walked out with 2 steaming bowls. Naruto practically jumped on the counter in excitement and took his bowl, digging in with gusto. I stared off into space thinking about things I'd have to tell him. Hoshi-chan, eat the ramen. Eat it. Naruto started chanting. Distracted from my thoughts, I looked back over to see both him and Tucci watching me expectantly. Sheepishly, I pulled out some chopsticks and split them. I guess I'll tell him later. Uncertainly, I brought up a glob of pasta from the bowl and blew on it. After taking a quick whiff, I chopped down. Instantaneously, I shoved more into my mouth. This is shwoo good, I exclaimed with a mouthful of noodles in my mouth. When we had finished eating a couple bowls, we waved goodbye to Tucci after promising to come back soon. He was really nice and let us eat on the house because it was Naruto's birthday. It was approaching dusk and I begged Naruto to show me around. He seemed uncomfortable with the idea, but upon promising to show him the chakra exercises I learned, he agreed readily. 15 minutes later, I completely understood why he did not want to do this. They were everywhere just staring at us, shooing us away. I was scared, more scared than when I was kidnapped. Naruto seemed to take it more in stride, but I could tell he was bothered. He would send everyone wary looks and eventually he ended up taking my hand so he could speed up without losing me. I relished in his company, holding his hand tighter as he led us into a small shop. Finally away from prying eyes, we separated and I looked around for a hat. Upon pulling out a sky blue beanie from a pile of clothes on sale, I put it on and shoved my red locks under it. Standing in front of a mirror, I saw some pieces still fell out, but it was mostly hidden. Nodding in approval, I turned to Naruto only to see him glancing cautiously at the shop owner who was watching us like a hawk. I shuddered at the looks he was sending Naruto. Confused and slightly irritated, I grabbed his hand and gave him a reassuring smile before asking, "What do you think? Does it look okay?" He snapped out of his anxiety and looked at the beanie. "Yeah, it looks fine. Why are you getting a hat though? I like your hair." I blushed and looked down sadly. "People keep staring, and the color is red." "It's red," I cried. He shifted his weight and glanced at the shopkeeper again. "It's not your hair. Trust me." "Then why do? And what's wrong with red?" He avoided my question. I tilted my head but decided not to ask. Instead, "I don't like red. I don't know. I've seen it too much. I don't like seeing it anymore." He looked at me funny. I shrugged and just pulled my new hat a little lower. Taking another look around the store, I decided to look for Naruto's birthday present now. I wanted to get him something he'd be able to keep or use often. Most things in here related to clothing, so I had to find something that he wouldn't really outgrow for a while. That's when I saw it. A pair of blue-green goggles. I walked over to them slowly and picked them up. Inspecting them, I immediately got an image of Naruto wearing them in my head. In fact, I had a feeling he'd wear them a lot. Smiling, I then walked over to the counter and looked up apprehensively at the shop owner. "I'd like to get this hat," I pointed to my head, "and these goggles, please." He grunted. 210 ryo, he said. I pulled out my small cotton wallet and pulled out the desired amount, handing it to him. Ringing it up, he handed me some change. As I was about to leave, he pulled me back and crouched down, saying, "Stay away from that blonde kid. He's dangerous." Okay. Highly irked at his comment, I turned to him and smacked him so suddenly that I didn't realize I had until after I'd done it. I covered my mouth in shock. "I am sorry, wait. No, I'm not. Don't talk about my Ni-chan that way." Then I ran to a wide-eyed Naruto, grabbed his hand and ran out the shop. And we kept running. We ran and ran, just to run. I couldn't stop thinking about what that man said, the stairs, and what I had done. It was wrong, it had to be. I could feel it. Of all things that had felt wrong to me so far in my life, and that was a lot of things, Naruto being called dangerous felt the worst. And I was going to act on those feelings. I stopped abruptly and turned to see the highly dazed Naruto watching me closely. He looked terrified of me, of what I would say. So, I didn't say anything. I just pulled out the goggles I got him and placed them on his head. And then I gave him a hug. I didn't say a thing as I felt tears wet my shoulder again. He didn't say anything either when he felt the same thing. I realized today that something more was going on, something bigger. It was something that involved Naruto and Naomi, but whatever it was I didn't know. It frightened me to feel such a thing and to know those looks, stares, glares, and whispers were something to fear. However, I decided that I didn't care. So long as I had him, I didn't care. Time passed quickly the next few years. We had a lot of trouble living in the orphanage. The caretakers kept trying to keep me away from Naruto, even going to such lengths of locking me in another room once. As payback, I peed on their pillows one evening. Naruto, when he found out, somehow managed to give them all haircuts while they slept. I think this was about when we began pranking people we didn't like. Another time, both of us had outgrown our smaller toddler beds and were going to be sent to our official bunks. Naruto had already been in his new room with the older kids for a few months by then. His bed was in the farthest end of the room, separating him from the other kids by one empty bunk, the bunk I wanted. The caretakers, as suspected, refused to let me sleep there and sent me to another room where the only other available bed was. I made it quite clear the next day that I was not taking this. The bunk they gave me had somehow ended up on the roof of the building along with all the caretakers' underwear and bras spread across it. I slept next to Naruto from then on. I had often been sought after for adoption for some reason. Clans in particular seemed to have come in the first week I had come to live at the orphanage looking for me. However, they all left after they found out it would have had to be a joint adoption with Naruto ni. Thank the Hokage for setting that up. Naruto was upset by this. Whether it was because he didn't like that people wanted to adopt me and not him, or because he was the reason we weren't adopted, I didn't know. I felt horrible for it and it made me dislike the villagers more. He was sulky and wouldn't talk to me for a week, but suddenly bounced back to his joyful self. It was about this time that I got my first letter from my Nei-chans. It was also the moment I realized that although I could speak amazingly, I could not read or write at all. So, I held onto the letter and tried asking the caretakers to teach me how to read and write. They weren't any help as they were still upset about previous pranks Naruto and I pulled on them. So, I did the only thing I knew to do. Wrote a letter back in English. It didn't occur to me that no one else understood a thing it said until Naruto pointed it out before I sent it. He thought it was pretty cool that I created a new language. So, he told me that if I taught him English then he would teach me how to read and write since he had already learned some from Gigi. I agreed readily. We both learned pretty quickly. Naruto seemed to catch on to the speaking part better than the writing, but became adept at English in about a year. I was much the same when it came to reading and writing the main language. We ended up speaking English more often than not because of the funny expressions we'd get from onlookers. To them it was gibberish, but to us it was a secret language just between family. I also told Naruto about his heritage. I only knew the basics told to me by Shizune and Tsunade, But it was enough for him to understand he was much more significant than he believed. I told him of Uzushiogakure and why our clan had been destroyed. I told him of how his mom must have lived here in Konoha, therefore surviving the clan's slaughter, and eventually had him only to have died sometime after. He seemed a little skeptical about this, telling me that the caretakers always said his family abandoned him. Appalled, I mollified his worry by stating that all Uzumaki have trademark red hair, except him since he was a half, and that I had never seen anyone else in the village with it, so they must have been lying. He was happy yet sad at this news. It meant his mom hadn't abandoned him, but it also meant his mom really was dead. Naruto also learned about how I had survived the slaughter by being sealed away and then later came to Konoha. His main reaction was based off of finding out I was technically 14 years older than him. I teased him about it, but he insisted that he was still the oldest. After finding out about everything, he did end up being a little clingier to me though. Not that I minded. I showed him our clan symbol, which seemed to be a common trademark throughout Konoha like on the flak jackets ninja wore. This seemed to prove to him that Uzumakis were an important and strong clan and that he was therefore important and strong, despite what other people may think. This knowledge really seemed to boost his self-confidence and ego. He and I ran out and bought clothing that had the Uzumaki symbol on it and wore it proudly. If we were dumb kids, we would have ran around telling people of our clan and expect them to suddenly respect us. We made that mistake only once with the caretakers of the orphanage. They point-blank called us liars, having never heard of Uzushiogakure or the Uzumaki clan, and didn't give us dinner. For me it was very off-putting to continually notice that barely anyone, except other clans, knew of our history. The Hokage, when I asked one day, told us that although for me the fall of Uzushio had only been a few years ago, for everyone in this village it had been almost 2 decades. Citizens didn't have much knowledge on foreign ninja villages and most ninjas alive now had been infants or young children when the Uzumaki had been slaughtered. No one really knew about us anymore. Naruto and I made a silent agreement to become strong to make people recognize us and the clan once more. After all, it was only a road step to Naruto's dream to become Hokage. We found our own secret training ground accidentally one day. We were playing and Naruto tripped into a little cave opening on the Hokage mountain. We explored by following the cave until we reached this extremely large open space that had the ceiling of the cave opened to a wide circular skylight. Under the skylight it seemed grass and other plants had grown, including very large trees that branched up to the opening. There was even a small underground water source that seemed to be a slow-moving river. To claim the cave as ours, we carved the Uzumaki symbol into the largest tree and went there to train from then on. I taught him all the chakra exercises Tsunade told and showed me. Naruto had yet to find his chakra and unlike me, took a while to grasp onto it. I monitored his chakra by closing my eyes and watching him with my glowing world, which I had dubbed chakra sense. This was when I found something really strange about Naruto that I had never seen in any other person before. When I saw Naruto's chakra, there were 2 chakra colors in his system. Inside his prominent blue were slivers of red that stemmed from something on his stomach and mixed into his chakra. Curious, I explained my chakra sense to him then told him about the 2 chakra colors. He knew nothing about it. My head supplied the answer for this red chakra as fox. I had no idea what that meant though, so we just left it at that. Naruto raised his chakra control slowly. It took him 2 months to be able to concentrate his chakra into the small leaves to begin sticking them to his head. By then I had advanced to tree walking, which I was having little luck in. One time Naruto overtaxed himself too far and depleted his blue chakra completely. This was when I witnessed the change to the red chakra. Instead of blue being prominent, red was. Instead of red slivers, there were blue slivers. The first time this happened, it scared both of us. Naruto's eyes were glowing red, but nothing really happened other than his light scratches healing up. I asked him how he felt and he just said itchy and a little irritated, but fine. After a half hour, his blue chakra replenished and the red chakra receded again. We did this process for a few weeks. Naruto would practice to exhaustion and then his eyes would go red with a slitted pupil. The more often it happened, the less he said he felt the effects of it. He wasn't itchy or even irritated anymore, just more energetic than normal. Once we realized this, we decided to experiment around with the different chakra. At first, he couldn't use it unless he was exhausted. After he got used to it, he was able to pull on it sometimes. I told him to not pull on it for too long because I was afraid of what would happen if the red chakra completely overtook his blue chakra. So, Naruto practiced with it, but I always watched to make sure he didn't lose his blue chakra slivers completely. The red chakra was wilder than blue chakra and harder to do chakra control techniques with. Mastering the leaf exercise with blue chakra then gave Naruto the goal to master it with the red chakra. That's how most things went from then on. Whatever we learned, he learned twice. After a year we both mastered walking on the trees and started on water walking. We blocked the cave entrances so that there was less a chance of anyone else finding our cave. We opted to enter and exit by the large trees that grew up to the skylight since we could just climb with chakra now. The skylight itself just looked like a large group of bushes above ground. The bushes were actually the tips of the trees sticking out, but it deterred anyone from noticing the cave at all. We taught each other many other things. I taught Naruto songs in English that I would randomly think of. We ran a lot and sung while we ran. It's surprisingly hard and a great breathing exercise as well as a way to increase our already amazing stamina. Naruto taught me how to swim, which became my favorite thing to do. We'd take a dip in the cave's underground river every day after we trained. He also taught me how to make traps to prank people and how to soften my footsteps so not to be heard. The first 2 years that we came to live with each other, it was about learning about and with each other. We became really close and I considered him more of a brother than just a cousin. When Naruto turned 5, things change. Okay, Naruto. If you win the next card game then I'll listen to any one request of yours. If I win, you have to tell me how you and Hoshi keep avoiding my Anbu to get inside my office unnoticed and you have to use the door from now on, the Hokage said exasperated. Naruto glared down at the cards placed on the Hokage's desk. Upon him turning 4, we had found out he had astounding luck when it came to card games. I had also found out the library had E-rank jutsus available and checked out the few scrolls. We had gone through so many chakra control exercises, we were getting bored. It was a challenge itself to teach ourselves hand seals. To put it simply, we sucked at them. Naruto was even better than me, mastering henge in 2 weeks. I just could not coordinate my small stubby toddler fingers the way I wanted them to go. Eventually, I got a little more creative in trying to perform a simple henge. I used my chakra sense to see how the chakra flowed inside me when I did manage to get the hand seals correct. Then I memorized the flow and spent a few days trying to replicate the same flow without hand seals. I could henge without so much of a thought now. It was ingenious and extremely lazy of me, but it worked. Anyway, the point is that we could henge and Naruto and I weren't that bad at card games. Casinos were not our enemy. We were officially rich and had one of our pillows back in the orphanage stock full of our winnings. Thankfully, Tsunade only rubbed off the love of gambling to me and not her bad luck. With our newfound money and our somewhat independence, we wanted out of the orphanage. Our only problem was that we weren't allowed until we became academy students. The earliest someone could get into the academy was 6, although most started around 8. 8, let alone 6, was not early enough for us. Naruto was about to become 5 and I just turned 4. So here we are, gambling with Hokage Gigi in order to win a simple request. We started small by letting him win a few times to boost his confidence. We lost pranking privileges towards the Hyugas because of this, not that we were allowed to in the first place. They didn't like having their hot springs filled with blue dye. They also didn't like having blue skin. It was a big loss to not be able to prank our favorite targets. They had the best reactions, but it would be worth it if we could enter the academy early. I fold, the Hokage groaned out a few minutes later. I believe I owe you a request now. Naruto grinned and I jumped up hugging him in joy. We want to start the academy a year early. Gigi sputtered a moment before leaning forward and folding his hands seriously. I would not recommend that, Naruto. Starting early can cause detrimental effects on your mental health. Huh? I didn't get a thing you just said. Naruto scratched his cheek. What I mean is that starting so early is bad for you. You only have to wait another year before you start. What's one more year? I coughed. He looked to me then back at Naruto. Or 2 years? It means a longer time at the orphanage. Naruto yelled. We want to leave it already. The Hokage sighed and sat there contemplatively for a few moments. I wrung my hands nervously and Naruto looked like he was about to die from anticipation. Suddenly Gigi grumbled something unintelligible and pulled out a scroll. Writing some long detailed paragraph, he handed the drying scroll to Naruto. I'll agree to your request. But, only Naruto can start a year early. I'm sorry, Hoshi, but I just can't let someone start the academy at 4. You'll have to start with everyone else your age. But that means I can't leave the orphanage with Naruto. I cried. Now, I never said anything about that, did I? You both are in a joint adoption, so if Naruto ended up leaving the orphanage, he can take responsibility for you. You'll have to sign a few papers and prove to me that you can take care of yourselves though. Is that okay? Yes. I squealed and both Naruto and I ran and hugged Oji-san tightly. I still have to test you both, the Hokage admitted. You'll be assisted by orphanage funds and you'd still get your weekly stipend from what Naruto's mom left, but do you have enough to rent an apartment or buy daily groceries? I snickered. Don't worry about money, Ji-san. We have our ways. I don't want to know, he mumbled. You'll have to learn how to cook and do your own house chores too. I can cook, I said excitedly. Naruto paled. No, I'd rather not die. I'll cook. That was only once, I muttered. Fine, I can learn to do the house chores and such. I'll be stuck at home while Naruto's at the academy anyway. The Hokage nodded. I guess you will handle things as you go. Here's a list of apartments and homes for rent or sale. We stared down at the list he handed us curiously. I spoke up. What's the difference between rent and sale? Rent is paying a small price every month to the owner for as long as you live there. Sale is buying the place for a large price only once and becoming owner of the place you bought. Sale it is then, Naruto said. I don't want to pay to live somewhere more than once, let alone every month. That's too much trouble. That's understandable, the Hokage said. But, can you afford any of these places? I told you not to worry about money. We're fine, I responded. Can we go look at the places in person and then choose? Go ahead. Make sure you come back by the end of the day and tell me so we can make this official. Race you. Naruto snatched the list from me, sticking his tongue out, and ran from the room. I stood stiff before bolting after him. No fair. You had a head start. We spent a few hours looking at apartments, but no one seemed to want us there, so we looked at different houses. We eventually found a really nice but small traditional house bordering the Hokage mountain and short walk away from our training ground. The house itself only had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a small living room. It was quaint and the property was large, so we could add on when we were older. It was hidden mostly in a forest, so we didn't have neighbors, which was nice. The previous owner was an old man who had given us the evil eye, but once we showed him how much we were willing to pay, he lightened up. The home was surprisingly cheaper than we expected, only 1,000,000 ryo. We took the contract back to the Hokage and he helped us fill it out. A week passed and we started moving into our new home. We had some Anbu begrudgingly help us move in furniture picked out by yours truly. I'd say the orphanage was sad to see us go, but that'd be a lie. I'm positive the caretakers threw a party once we left. Naruto and I ended up both sharing the master suite and turning the second bedroom into a guest room. We had been too used to sleeping in each other's company at the orphanage. We were 4 and the bed was huge, so why not? Plus we liked cuddling. Naruto started the academy the following week on his birthday and I started a garden to pass time while he was gone. The next month consisted of Naruto complaining about schoolwork. None of the other kids were cool enough for him. This was a blatant lie on his part, but I knew not to say anything about it. His class hadn't done anything with chakra yet and most of the school day consisted of history, theory, and math. He absolutely hated it. The only thing that Naruto found enjoyable was the taijutsu class where they began learning very basic defensive forms. When November came, something unimaginable happened. I don't want to. I screamed. Come on, please, Naruto begged. I'll show you some of the forms from the academy that I learned. You barely know them yourself, I retorted. And even so, I wouldn't. This is just mean. Not any more mean than dyeing the Hyuga's skin blue, he countered. True, I mumbled. Okay, I guess I'll help. I just have to find where their well is, right? Yup. While they're distracted by me, I want you to pour this into their well water, okay? He pulled out 5 huge containers of white powder. I sighed and took the bottles. The poor Uchiha, I bemoaned. Their asses will never be the same again. Naruto snorted. They deserve it. Their stupid police force keeps blaming me for things I didn't do. Why do they keep thinking it's me breaking into the girls' public baths? You broke into the girls' bathhouse. I screeched. Why wasn't I invited? It wasn't me, I swear. Otherwise you would have come, hands down, he declared. In fact, that's a good idea. Let's do that later. Does this mean we aren't going to prank the Uchihas? I asked. Oh, no. They are still getting what's coming. When you hear screaming and see a horde of policemen pass, run in and finish it. Be back in a half hour, he waved and ran off. 15 minutes later, a good 24 black-haired Uchihas ran screaming out of the district smelling like skunk. I didn't even question how Naruto managed that as I plugged my nose and snuck into the Uchiha compound. Another 15 minutes later, I was pouring the 5 containers of powdered laxative into their well water and then running the hell out of there before I got caught. The Uchihas were going to be feeling like crap all week. Hee. Naruto and I eventually met up back at the house and prepared to head to the women's baths that night. However, something strange caught my attention. The streets were oddly bare and I felt as if we were being watched. I grabbed Naruto's shoulder, stopping him in the middle of the road. What is it, Hoshi-chan? He asked nonchalantly with his arms behind his head. I closed my eyes and used my chakra sense to look around. Just as I suspected, there were several chakra signatures around us hidden. Most were civilian chakra levels, but I noticed one slightly higher level. It was probably a chunin. What caught my attention was the weapons each of them were carrying as they stalked around us from behind nearby buildings. We're in trouble, Ni-chan. Big trouble, I blanched. There were no police around right now because we had just pranked them either. They were probably washing out the smell of skunk as we speak. What are you talking about? The group of men chose that time to run out at us. Thinking quickly, I grabbed a shocked Naruto's hand and bolted north while dodging the big men. After a moment, Naruto began pulling me along instead as we ran through alleyways. I blinked, flashing the chakra sense. Lots of men were coming from our left. Go right, I yelled. Naruto pulled me right and we ran through another alley. I blinked again and this time called left when suddenly I was yanked back and pulled from Naruto. He abruptly stopped and turned back to see me being choked by a lean middle-aged man. Hoshi! Naruto shouted as he charged and tackled the man off of me. I gasped for air and slowly pulled myself off the ground. I watched as several more men entered the alleyway blocking both sides. Naruto wasn't doing too badly and beating the crap out of the civilian until he was pulled off of him by another. Payback, demon brat. The other man held a knife. Finally grabbing my bearings, I ran forward and pulled chakra into my hand and pulsed it as I punched the man in the balls. All's fair in love and war, after all. His scream turned into a girlish wail before he passed out. I had started trying to apply chakra to my muscles, then pulse it on Tsunade-ne's recommendation in her last letter. So far, I could only get it to work 2 out of 3 times. The third time usually backfired with a long-lasting burning sensation in my chakra-charged appendage. It was the epitome of pain and I hated it, but I had to practice to get the chakra burst to have the right timing. Thankfully, this time it worked. Seeing the man's obvious loss of his nuts, the rest of the men subconsciously covered their private area and let go of Naruto temporarily. It was enough time for him to get back up and finish his own target with a punch to the face. 2 down, many more to go. I had no qualms about aiming for the guy's balls since I had no fighting style or taijutsu training before. All I had was 3 years of practiced chakra control, which didn't give me much other than a 2 out of 3 chance of a chakra-enhanced punch. Naruto was better off than me. He had some academy training in him, if only a little. He took up a defensive stance which I mimicked but had no idea what to do with. We were beaten horribly in less than a minute and it pissed me off. Naruto was held down and punched repeatedly in the gut while I struggled in another man's grip. I had tried another chakra punch only to hit the backlash this time and was quaking horribly on the ground waiting for the burning to pass. Just kill him already, one yelled and I screeched in anger trying to get free. Naruto was fighting to stay conscious and was now covered in developing bruises. No, the one with the chunin level chakra walked up with what I recognized to be a kunai. Fucking monster needs to suffer loss like we did. A sudden coolness pressed against my throat and I stared into the brown eyes of my assailant. I felt the pressure increase and I whimpered as blood trickled down my neck. No. Let her go. Naruto growled, red eyes glowing, as a searing alarm went off in my head. My chakra sense went haywire as I witnessed Naruto's blue chakras shrink into non-existence. Then everything went to hell. It was like the world had turned red. The darkened night was illuminated by the chakra oozing from Naruto's pores. It was pooling on the ground, building up around him, and burning anything it touched. I couldn't see anything other than him. One moment he was on the ground bruised and broken, and the next he was ripping and thrashing and killing. Blood and guts painted the alley, and where I was had become the only area kept untouched. I don't know if it was shock, fear, or simply a morbid fascination that stopped me from looking away, but it was brutal murder. There was barely anything left of them except fleshy pieces strewn everywhere. And the blood, so much blood. The first had been beheaded and the head rolled until it was stomped on and smushed. The second was clawed to pieces. Another punched to death. A few were just flung around to smash repeatedly into the walls. One was simply ripped in half. The civilians didn't stand a chance. Any blade they had just melted upon touching the red chakra. I watched as Naruto stood after butchering the civilians. He headed towards me and the last man, who continued to hold the kunai to my throat and was shaking in terror. Stand back, or I'll kill her. Naruto paused, sneering and growling. He glared harshly at the man while clenching and unclenching his hands. As he was standing still, I finally took in his form. He was covered by the red chakra and it was bubbling around him in the shape of a cat. No, a fox. The chakra'd tail started swishing as he scrutinized his target. Wait a minute, a fox? Hadn't my mind supplied that his red chakra was from a fox when I first noticed it? Then what was this fox that? I grabbed my blue teddy and tiptoed down the hallway, peeking into the last room where I heard music echo from. Bradley was lying on the futon with his laptop hooked up to the TV and was watching another anime show. I opened the door a crack only for it to squeak and draw Bradley's attention. He paused the show and turned around. Isn't it a bit late for you to be up? No, I yawned. Okay, maybe. Can I watch too? You won't even understand what's going on. It's subbed and I'm hundreds of episodes in, he said. I quietly climbed up onto the metal bunk bed, wrapped a blanket around me, and refused to move. He sighed and started typing on the computer. What are you doing? I asked. If you're going to watch, I might as well restart it from the first episode. I'm not pausing it every 5 seconds, so you'll have to keep up with the subs. That okay? I nodded. What's it called? Naruto. You'll like it. It's about a bratty kid, just like you, he teased. I stuck my tongue out at him and snuggled into the bed sheets waiting for the show to start. 12 years ago, a 9-tailed fox suddenly appeared. Its tails lashed out, smashing mountains, and sending tidal waves crashing to the shores. The TV showed a giant fox with 9 tails snarling, jumping, and crushing trees. The ninja rose up to defend their villages. Many ninjas appeared on screen, some injured, and others getting ready to attack the giant fox. Hold the attack and wait for the 4th Hokage, someone yelled. It's getting closer. Don't let it near the village, another shouted. Suddenly, a giant toad with a pipe in his mouth and giant swords on his back appeared with a man standing on its head. One shinobi faced the 9-tailed fox in mortal combat. He sacrificed his life to capture the beast and seal it in a human body. The man put his hands close together and a bright light engulfed the screen. This ninja is known as the 4th Hokage. A blonde baby surrounded by candles and with an inked seal on his stomach appears crying before the screen blacked out. My eyes refocused and my mouth dropped. Naruto. That baby was Naruto. I'd recognize that blonde hair and whiskers anywhere. Heck, Bradley even said his name as the title of the TV show. That meant the fox, the 9-tailed fox, the Kyuubi, is sealed inside him. It made so much damn sense now. The red chakra, the way people treat him, his current form. The kunai dug farther into my neck when Naruto took a step forward. I pushed myself as far back away from the blade as I could. That's right, demon. Back, or else. Anger coursed through me at the man's words. I chakra charged my leg muscles and stomped down on his right foot, crushing it. In the small second he yelped, I snapped my hands up and shoved the arm holding the kunai away from me. Then I snatched the kunai from him and swung backwards in a circle, slicing the Chunin's stomach open. Naruto took that moment to rush forward and bash his fist through the man's skull. The body fell to the ground. Loud alarms resounded through the village just as Naruto rushed to me, eye color wavering between blue and red. The Kyuubi's chakra started receding back in as Naruto ripped a part of his tattered shirt off and wrapped it around my bleeding neck. Just as he was finishing tying the knot, masked Anbu dropped into the ally and surrounded us on all sides. Scared, I clung onto Naruto. I felt Naruto's chakra spike again in preparation for another possible fight. However, the Anbu must have felt it too. One of them quickly pulled out a small square of a sheet and placed it on Naruto's forehead. I watched the Kyuubi's chakra recede completely. There weren't even any slivers of red left over. Naruto's eyes rolled backwards and he tersely passed out in front of me. I freaked and burst forward, blocking him from the view of the Anbu. "Get away from us!" I screamed at them, bloody kunai held in front of me protectively. The hysteria and terror that had been held off by shock had finally caught up to me and I started bawling. I needed to block them or barricade them or something. They had to stay away. They just had to. I couldn't let them take Naruto. He was all I had left. He was my only family and I couldn't let anyone hurt him. So I glared and shifted every time one of them moved. I closed my eyes and let my chakra sense see for me. It was a 360-degree vision that could see them even if my eyes couldn't keep up. Following each chakra, they were everywhere. There were even more Anbu than there had been civilians. I also noticed that the square sheet connected to Naruto's forehead had a foreign chakra pulsing, invading his system. I turned thoughtlessly and yanked it off. The Kyuubi's chakra slowly returned, but only in slivers as it is normally. Naruto's slightly burned skin started to heal as well. I slipped slightly on the bloody ground when I turned back around to face the masked shinobi. My blue beanie also fell off, my red hair tumbling all over me. One of the many Anbu took that moment to rush at me and pulled the kunai from my hand in a quick swipe. Pissed, I rammed my knee upwards only for it to be blocked and I got restrained. I tried biting and clawing with my nails, but it had no effect on the masked man. So instead I reached and grasped onto Naruto and refused to let go. "Ni-chan, wake up. Wake up, please, calm down, we aren't going to hurt you. You're safe now." A deep monotone voice came from the dog-masked man that held me. I growled and struggled some more. Like hell I was listening to them. "Let me go, let us go," I repeated angrily. He simply ignored me, reaching for Naruto as well. I bit his outstretched arm until it bled. "Don't touch him, I'll kill you," I snarled as I continued to bite him. "Violent little thing," another masked person guffawed out. "Knock her out." A small pressure on the back of my neck was felt when my right shoulder blade abruptly tingled. My capturer grunted and I was dropped. I snapped my eyes open and actually looked this time to see the Anbu who had restrained me was sporting a blistering hand. My right shoulder blade continued to prickle and I backed into Naruto and hugged him to me, unsure of what to do. A groan from Naruto alerted me to him waking. "Hoshi-chan," he mumbled sitting up. "What happened? Why's your hair out? Who are these people?" I glared at the Anbu again and knowing there was no way escaping this. "Bit out, we'll come willingly, but we get to stay conscious and I get to stay with Naruto ni." The dog Anbu nodded curtly and walked towards us. I snubbed him and led a highly confused Naruto over to the purple-haired Anbu instead. Naruto wisely kept his mouth shut, but managed to give everyone a dirty look before we were shunshined out of the flesh-covered ally. We were dumped in a small windowless room with the dog Anbu of all people to watch us. I was currently glaring daggers at him, wondering if all of this was punishment for pranking the Uchiha earlier today. I bet it was. No, I knew it was. The Anbu had a very faint Uchiha chakra signature in one of his eyes to prove it. It was weird to see two chakra signatures in a person that wasn't Naruto, but it was definitely there. There was also a very large amount of chakra signatures in the room next door to ours. In fact, I believe we are in that room's closet. One of the chakra signatures was Hokage Gigi. It seemed pretty stressed and he flared his chakra angrily every once in a while. I also noticed a Hyuga and Uchiha in there that I recognized from pranking their clans often. The other signatures were as various as they come. Pissed, I nudged Naruto who had fallen asleep on my lap. "Wake up, I'm awake," he cried in English as he jerked up and ended up headbutting me. I slammed my hands to my now aching forehead and rubbed it profusely to ease the pain. Having your cranium slammed in by another head is not pleasant. Sadly, this was a common occurrence and happened more often than I'd like. If you weren't, you are now. How's your head? I asked, poking the reddening skin near his temple. I'm fine, Naruto replied while looking around. Why'd you wake me up? I thought something bad happened. Thought I should give you an update, I said. Their chakra is all riled up right now. Oji-san feels like he's about to blow a casket. Oh, and Dog Mask won't stop staring at you. It's creepy. Naruto threw the Anbu an uneasy look before turning back to me. I wish you didn't tell me that, he whined. I snickered and shrugged my shoulders. Some of my hair tumbled down and I frowned at the red strands. I miss my hat, I murmured. When do you think they'll let us back out? Soon, I hope. I need to use the bathroom, he complained as he shifted uncomfortably. I leaned over and grabbed one of his hands. Inspecting them, I peeled some dried blood off. You need a bath, I stated, or at least a change of clothes. Naruto looked at the flaking blood that coated him. His face turned somber and he faced away from me. I killed them, he said. I killed them and I tore them to pieces. I remained quiet for a second, trying to think of something to cheer him up. After a moment I bumped his shoulder playfully. You beat my record of kills at least. It was a crappy attempt at a joke and I knew it, but he gave me a small smile anyway. Do you think I'm a monster? A demon? Naruto suddenly asked. He turned and looked me straight in the eyes with so much desperation in his face. I wanted to go re-murder the already dead men for causing this. No, I said firmly. Were you scared? He added quickly. It would be a lie if I said no. I watched him lower his head sadly, but I wasn't scared of you. I was scared of the men and the Anbu and the whole situation. Naruto shot his face towards me wide-eyed before his lip quivered and I saw him holding back tears. Really? Really, I grinned. I'd never be scared of you, Ni-chan. But I killed all those men, he exclaimed while waving his arms around to emphasize the statement. You don't even seem bothered. I gave him a deadpan stare. And what would have happened if you hadn't? He paused. We would have died, I said bluntly. They would have killed me and made you watch. Then they would have killed you. But it was a matter of do or do not and you did. You saved us. Don't feel guilty about killing them when they were going to do the same thing to you. I stood and yelled loudly. My voice echoed the room before being followed by silence. Even the chakra signatures in the area stilled. Naruto seemed to be staring at me while taking in what I just screamed, and the dog Anbu. He was just standing there as usual. Quite awkwardly, I might add. The closet door was slammed open and a slightly worried-looking blonde man peeked in. Is everything okay in here? So now they come in, I mumbled. Unless you're here to feed us, give us a bathroom break, or let us out, go away. I'm having an important conversation here. The blonde gave me a blank stare bordering on confusion and I realized I just said all that in English. Sighing, I said again, we're hungry and need to go bathroom. Oh, he walked out without another word. Jerk. A few minutes passed and Naruto nudged me. I leaned against his shoulder as he expressed, I gotta tell you something. You can't tell anyone, okay? I murmured in agreement, wondering what he seemed so worried about. I met someone, earlier today when we were being attacked. You know my red chakra? I nodded into his shoulder. It's not really mine. It's the Q. He paused and glanced at the Anbu. Nine-tailed fox's chakra. He is pretty much living in my gut. I thought that you should know. My breath hitched before I snuffled a small laugh. He waited for my response as I continued giggling. Eventually he scowled at me. It's not funny. This is serious. Sorry, it was the way you said it. That was all, I managed to say. So you have a fox in your gut, huh? I'm guessing you're not bothered by what I just said since you're laughing, he replied dryly, but he seemed less tense because of my reaction. I sighed happily. I had thought I was going to have to tell him myself sometime and I had no idea how. I had been worried about how he'd react. And now here he is, telling me, and wondering how I'd react to the news instead. It was kind of ironic. I'm not bothered at all. I actually was told about your tenant earlier today by the voices and visions I told you about before. I had been planning on telling you after we got out of here, I explained. Silence. So, what was meeting a giant demon like? I asked. We mostly just yelled at each other, he admitted. And I think he tried to kill me. Oh, guess I should have expected something like that. What did you yell at each other about? I guess you could say I wasn't really happy to find out there was a demon sealed inside me. I'd probably be too, I commented. Especially if no one told me. Yeah, you blamed him for the civilians' treatment to us, didn't you? I accused. He twitched, maybe. Well, it's not his fault. The civilians chose to be mean on their own, I chastised. He was just the indirect cause. He shouldn't have attacked the village anyway. If he hadn't done that, then none of this would have even happened, he moped. Did you ask why he attacked Konoha? I delved. What if he had a good reason? There is never a good enough reason to slaughter people, Naruto wisely said. No comment, I drawled out. But, still, I'd think you'd know by now not to judge a book by its cover. Just look at us. Villagers hate us, but they don't know us. If they got to know us, then maybe they wouldn't hate us. It could be the same with the the nine-tailed fox. Another pause. I hate it when you're right, Naruto pouted. Fine, I'll talk to him first and then judge. But, if he still ends up being a heartless demon, I told you so. Sometimes I wonder who's the oldest here, I teased. Oh right, it's me. No you're not. I'm a year older than you, he exclaimed. Only physically. I'm mentally older, I asserted proudly. Being frozen for 15 years with the mind of a baby doesn't count. I smiled, having heard this argument 1,000 times. Stretching, I let the topic end and we sat in comfortable silence. We're different, Naruto declared an hour later. I have a demon sealed in me and you have weird visions. Yeah, I agreed. But being different is like being special, isn't it? We're special, not different. Special then, he nodded. Hoshi-chan? Yeah? I really gotta pee. Me too. Hey, dogman, we need to go to the bathroom. Naruto shouted at the Anbu. No reply. If you don't let us go to the bathroom, you will become our new pranking target. Naruto proclaimed. Slight shift in weight, but still nothing. I'll hold him down. You pee on him, I grinned. The Anbu had been trained for anything. Protect the Hokage? Easy. Information gathering? It's a trade. Assassination missions? Doable. Watching the Uzumaki Hellions? No. That was not in their parameters. You'd be surprised what children can do when desperate. Unfortunately, Anbu Dog learned that today. Attack! Naruto yelled as we both ran at him. The Anbu stood motionless for a moment, unsure of what to do when I tackled him and started climbing up his pants. He didn't seem too bothered and kept his stoniness as he began to pry me off. Naruto decided to use this opportunity to pull down his pants and piss right on Dogmosk's leg. That's when the indifferent Anbu wasn't so indifferent anymore. He started flailing and trying to get me off while running backwards away from Naruto, who was now very much relieved. I still needed to use the bathroom though, and unlike Naruto, I wanted toilet paper, which was not currently available in the closet. The more the Anbu tried to yank me off, the tighter I held onto him. I didn't exactly trust him not to throw me across the room if he had the chance. So, yeah, I held on for dear life. Naruto pulled up his pants and joined me. We were climbing, kicking, tackling and clawing. The Anbu eventually slipped on pee and we all fell to the ground with a loud thud. After he didn't move for a while, I removed the white dog mask to reveal another mask. This mask was black and only covered the bottom half of his face. His eyes were closed and there was a nice-sized bump forming on his head. I poked his cheek a few times and he didn't move. We knocked him out, Naruto whispered, and we began giggling at the insanity of it. A clinking caught my attention and I saw a few scrolls fall out of Anbu Dog's pocket. I reached over and grabbed them, inspecting the insides. They were full of squiggly words and I realized this is what sealing looked like. Naruto was taking his sweet time farting on the masked man's head when I started unrolling one of the scrolls quickly. Nii-chan, help me tie him up. Naruto quickly grabbed the other end of the scroll and in less than a minute, our watcher was wrapped up in one of his own scrolls. We dragged him so he lay in the pee puddle and took this moment to admire our work. Giving each other a quick high five, I grabbed the extra scrolls and stuffed them down my shirt to look at later, and then we ran out of the closet right into a full room of shinobi. I colored red and asked, "Where's the bathroom? I need to go potty." They all immediately shot up in outrage for some reason. Naruto rushed forward to grab my hand and pulled me out of what I realized was a meeting room. Just as we were running down the hallway looking for a possible bathroom or hiding place, I tripped on my hair and face planted on the ground pitifully. Naruto turned and outright laughed as I groaned in pain over my poor crushed nose. "When was the last time you cut your hair?" Naruto asked as I got up. I stayed silent. Now that I thought about it, when was the last time I cut my hair? I didn't ever have my hair cut while traveling with my Nei-chans because I didn't really need to, and I certainly haven't since I came to Konoha for obvious reasons. I wouldn't trust anyone with sharp scissors around me, or Naruto, on a good day. I cut Naruto's hair for that reason. I pulled my hair forward and inspected it. It was long, so long it was down to my ankles. How had I not noticed? I wear a hat except for bedtime, but still. You've never cut your hair before, have you? Naruto laughed. I reddened. Just help me find a bathroom, I diverted the question. When we finally found one, Naruto waited outside and I ran in only to be held back by a large hand picking me up the scruff of my shirt. Found you, a voice exclaimed. It was the blonde-haired ninja that wouldn't let us go to the bathroom before. No, I wailed. Give me 1 minute, please. Naruto himself was being held an arm's length away by another shinobi. He gave me a sad look. Sorry, Hoshi. I tried to stop him. I reached my hand out longingly towards the bathroom. So close, I lamented as we were carried away, yet so far. We ended up back in the meeting room, only this time we were held up in front of a group of very irritable ninja and an exasperated Hokage Gigi. Naruto glowered at them all and started complaining about being stuck in a room without food or a bathroom break while I just teared up. To me, everything just turned into a blur. I didn't like them staring at us, glaring at us, and I had to pee. I really had to pee, and now I just could not hold it anymore. I wet myself. Then I started sobbing from embarrassment. See what you did? I heard Naruto yell at them. Hoshi, it's okay. Everything's okay. Please stop crying. I wad to GWUO, I wailed. I'm sorry. I couldn't see through my tears, but apparently I got a lot of people suddenly surrounding me trying to calm me down. It was scaring me and I started panicking, calling out for Naruto. Naruto himself was immediately next to me, batting off adults who were trying to pick me up or offer me something. I learned something that day. Tears are a powerful force, one to be reckoned with, and I was not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. On the good side, we got out of what could have been some serious trouble. On the bad side, I was coddled by grown adults that I didn't know at all while being soaked with pee. Later I decided it was a bad thing. It made sense though, considering I had a really bad day. I saw more red than I'd ever like to see. I lost my hat, Naruto, and I almost died. Naruto ended up having a demon living in his gut. I wet myself, and now I was being fawned over like some lost puppy. G-san ended up being the one to break everything up. Anbu Hound, take them home. Everyone else, this meeting is over. The seal has already been verified as stable, and as you can see they are both perfectly stressed children who just went through a very traumatic endeavor. There are to be no more arguments on this topic. Dismissed. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.